Hello, Africa. This is Business Africa, and I am Ignatius Ano. Our top stories. Climate finance is seeing an uptick in Africa as the continent still lacks access to electricity to power homes and industries. We ask if climate finance can mitigate Africa's energy needs. Also ahead, when Ivory Coast meets a luxury shoemaker, Angelo Eric Bote handmakes his shoes to serve very high clientele in this West African nation. And fresh hope for local entrepreneurs. In the Central African Republic, the government sets up a fund to support self-help projects by young entrepreneurs, but criteria for disbursement is still unclear. Details right now. Now, think of how food ends up on your table. Your local farmer uses various tools, including a tiny mobile phone, to make that happen. But if there's no sustainable energy, humanity might be doomed, right? It's a clear example of what could happen without the needed investment in Africa's energy needs. Climate financing is on the rise to tackle these challenges. But could that mitigate the energy needs of the continent?
The unseen power that runs industries and pretty much everything else. Energy comes in many forms, from fuel to power vehicles, gas for cooking, and electricity to power homes and factories. Despite all these, Africa continues to suffer from a severe lack of access to energy, particularly electricity. The International Energy Agency reported in 2020 that 75% of the sub-Saharan African population have no access to electricity. And with rapid urbanization expected to double to 2.5 billion in 2050, experts say the deficit could grow if urgent action is not taken. The good news is climate finance is seeing an uptick on the continent. In 2019, the African Development Bank committed $3.5 billion across the continent to climate finance. There is a call to governments to increase green financing as Africa's energy security remains weak.
Hasnan Yeva-Hussein is CEO of Group Filatex in Madagascar. He joins us from the capital, Antananarivo. Good to have you on the program. Thank you. So first, the International Energy Agency says that more than half of the sub-Saharan African population lack access to electricity, with Africa's urban population projected to double to 2.5 billion by 2050. How crucial is climate financing on Africa's energy needs?
I think it is obvious that with Africa's high birth and urbanization rates, access to electricity, access to energy is no longer a luxury, but a real need. It is a necessity, and therefore I think it is a human right. If we take the example of a farmer today, a farmer without electricity, he couldn't sell his crops. He couldn't buy fertilizer. Without mobile phones and no electricity. The same goes for children. Children couldn't learn and couldn't educate themselves. Hospitals wouldn't be able to function, and of course, factories wouldn't be able to function either. I think access to affordable energy is a real necessity in Africa.
So, can climate financing get the continent out of the dark? And what should African governments do in the medium term to bring this into fruition?
I think that there are solutions. Today, despite the pandemic, there are solutions to this energy crisis. There's climate finance by the different actors that must be supported, especially by the African Development Bank, which increased its contribution to 35% in 2019. There's a shift that we must support from fossil fuels to greener energy. We must support sustainable and resilient agriculture, but also develop a green economy, especially by supporting its financing. Today, green projects, governments want to put in place tax regimes that are more attractive for these types of projects.
Finally, talk to us about your work in Madagascar to provide renewable energy in a country where only 50% of the population has access to electricity.
So in Madagascar today, we produce 33%. A third of Madagascar's energy was fossil fuel energy, which has been scaled back since 2005. And we have therefore, despite the pandemic, transformed all these cities today with hybrid renewable energy. But it is essential for a country as an emergency to have solar energy developed as soon as possible. And in particular, we intend to provide around 150 megawatts of solar until the end of this year in Madagascar.
We appreciate your time on the program. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much.
Hasnain Yeva Hussein is CEO of Group Filatex, Madagascar. Now, let's shift focus to the west of Africa now. In Ivory Coast, a local shoemaker is making a case for the need to preserve handmade products. Angelo Eric Bote is concerned that increasing use of automated machines risk quality and the precision to produce customized shoes for its upper-class clientele.
Angelo Eric Bote is an Ivorian shoemaker, but not like the others. For 7 years, Bote has grown his brand, making shoes for men and women. His clients are the elite dressers. To buy a pair from his shop, one has to part with an average of 130,000 francs, or 200 euros. His shoes are all handmade. It takes him days to sew and weave just one pair. Bote argues that mass production using automated machines is bad for quality and precision, achieved with a human touch. If we want to keep our know-how, our handmade, because whoever talks about industrialization talks about reducing the contribution of man. So we're going to move. Why not to 80% machine and 20% handmade? Is that what I'm really interested in? No. I want a business that, even if it has to produce 100, 200 or 300 pairs, because let's not forget, luxury is characterized by scarcity. Bote dreams of seeing Ivory Coast become the leader in the production and marketing of luxury leather goods. He says government policy needs to support the sector as a niche industry. The school will not train everyone. So do we think about all those people that the school cannot train? Who will train them? Shoemaking can be a catch-22 that can pick up a lot of people. Bote's journey is a source of emulation in the West African country, which is increasingly encouraging entrepreneurship to solve youth unemployment.
The economic cost of conflict in sub-Saharan Africa is enormous. In 2019, the International Monetary Fund found the quote, per capita GDP can be as much as 15 to 20% lower 5 years after the end of a conflict than a non-conflict scenario. In the Central African Republic, there's now renewed hope for entrepreneurs after the social crisis. Young people are now venturing into various self-help projects to get them out of poverty, an initiative that has caught the eye of the state. Correspondent Samia Thierry-Inzam reports.
The end of the social crisis in the Central African Republic has given young people new hope. In the capital Bangui, several of them have opted to undertake various self-help projects to reintegrate into the society. This is the case of Jocelyn, who, after taking refuge in the camps for displaced persons severally, decided to make artisanal cooking pot along with his brothers in Yangato neighborhood of Bangui. We fled to find refuge in the IDP sites, and this is where we settled during the unfortunate events. Molds, fine sand, charcoal and fire, plus all the raw materials collected are the daily routine of Jocelyn and his brothers in this workshop. Here, pots are made in sets of 3 or 4 depending on the quantity of material available. A little over an hour and a half is used to produce a set, much to the satisfaction of clients. Central African authorities concerned about the future of the youth of the country in the grip of armed conflict have just initiated an investment guarantee fund. The aim is to help improve the working conditions of young entrepreneurs and encourage those who have taken up arms to abandon it. The share capital of this fund is 10 billion francs CFA, and the first partner is the state. And to start with, the state is ready to invest 2 billion. This is an initiative launched by young Central African entrepreneurs, but the conditions to access this fund remains yet to be defined.
And that's it for Business Africa. Head to africanews.com for more. I thank you for watching, and goodbye.